Okay, well, good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn more about our latest call program, the Ocean Supercluster Resilience Call for Proposals. Our agenda, if we flip to the agenda slide, our agenda for today will start with a small welcome and overview, and then a deeper dive into the call process and requirements, some details about our upcoming ideation event, and more details on membership and idea submissions with an opportunity to hear from you through a live polling session to gather some of your initial thoughts on the call after our discussion today. So we will take some time partway through the agenda to take some questions on the call requirements, and you should be able to submit those through the chat function as we go along. The ocean economy is expected to grow to 4 trillion Canadian dollars by 2030. And despite the significant impacts of the pandemic, it is expected to represent a significant opportunity for both Canada and globally for the economic recovery. We are now in the beginning of the UN Decade of Ocean, and Canada strongly supports the Ocean Action Agenda of the High-Level Panel on Sustainability that was presented just in December. Finally, we are incredibly excited to start to see industry engagement begin with government as they develop the Blue Economy Strategy for Canada. Our oceans present much opportunity, but are also facing significant challenges in the coming years. And we, as Canadians with the longest coastline in the world and the 4th largest ocean territory, have a key role to play. The Ocean Supercluster is focused on growing the ocean economy and changing the way ocean business is done, becoming increasingly collaborative, digital, sustainable, inclusive, and world-leading. We, as an organization, are at a very interesting point in our journey. We are a little bit more than halfway through our first 5 years. We now have over 350 members from across the country. We have approved over 45 projects and announced 21 of those with a focus on inclusive growth and significant activity in digital and sustainable solutions. This has allowed us to do things that we have never tried before, which leads us to today's discussion around the OSCR. You can flip to the next slide. This is really about creating opportunity for projects that we have not funded before, projects that we believe can be incredibly beneficial to the overall growth of the Canadian ocean economy, and that will build upon much of the activity so far. It is also an opportunity for members to connect in new ways with a strong focus on further building our ecosystem. It is a one-time call, really encouraging members to tackle significant challenges in Canada's ocean industries and the ocean community at large. We are investing up to $15 million into projects that demonstrate strong collaboration and focus on supporting the growth of multiple Canadian innovation-focused companies. And finally, it seeks project ideas that promote ocean digital transformation, strengthen private-public connections, and build diverse partnerships between OSC members. We are very excited to see what this latest call will bring. And with that, I'll hand it over to Susan, our CTO, to give you more details on the call. Thank you.
Okay, great. Hi, good afternoon and good morning, everybody. So I'm going to be talking a bit now about the application process as well as the project selection criteria. So I guess the first point there is really important one, and that's about the project lead applicant being a requirement to have them be an OSC member to submit an EOI. The same requirement as what we had in our AOSP2 program that we ran last summer. And so, I mean, just to clarify a couple of details around this, First of all, it's not required for the lead applicant to be an industry member at the time of the submission. So there is a free membership that's available. So a relatively low bar in terms of what needs to, the class of membership that needs to be, the lead applicant needs to be able to submit an EOI. And in addition to that, it is not a requirement for collaborators and other organizations that you might see fit to bring onto your project to be members at the time of the EOI submission. Okay. Applicants need to submit an EOI using the prescribed EOI template, and so please don't include, although they could be valuable and have additional information, at the EOI stage, we are not processing additional information over and above the EOI template. So, corporate presentations or letters of support, they won't be processed. So please just use the EOI template. And there's word count limits and other instructions within that template as well that you should read through and should follow. Third point there is around OSC and our inability during a call process. Overarchingly, we want to be fair to all applicants in terms of the information that we're providing. So we will not be providing detailed project-specific feedback. So like don't submit a draft EOI. We won't be able to comment on that, for example. But as Kendra mentioned in her previous comments, this is a bit of a different approach that we're using with this call in terms of us actively going out and soliciting consortiums, if they're interested, to share ideas during the EOI stage of the project. Some organizations are very interested in understanding what ideas are out there, want to gain some more access to hearing a bit more about these things during the EOI stage. So for project consortiums that are interested in doing this, and again, it's not a mandatory requirement to share ideas, we are providing more support and actively soliciting this, and we're going to be talking a bit more about that during the later in the presentation today. So we'll get into that in a couple more slides from now. Applicants will know about the EOI outcome by the middle of March, and that'll be about the time that you'll find out whether you've succeeded or not. Successful applicants will be eligible to submit a proposal only. Next slide, Nicola. Next slide. Thanks. Perfect. Applicants will have 5 weeks from the date of notification to submit a full proposal. That will be around the middle of April, right, that those are due. And again, we'll need to have applicants prepare and submit those in a prescribed format, which is basically an extended Word template document with additional questions. Looks a little bit like an EOI, but obviously more detailed information is required. We would also require a detailed budget to be completed. It's an Excel workbook that we would provide, and letters of support are also able to be submitted at that stage as well. Next slide, please. Okay, around the proposal selection and award process, so proposals will be evaluated by an OSCR call evaluation committee, and those recommendations will be ratified by OSC's board of directors. Applicants will be notified about the outcome and any conditions for funding, and in some cases may be requested to revise or provide additional information around certain aspects of their proposal in order to reach a final selection decision. So that may occur to applicants advance to full proposal. That will not occur during the EOI stage. Applicants are required to enter into a OSC project agreement, so a contract, to solidify and formalize the arrangement that will be based on the original proposal that was submitted. And in the case of any unsuccessful applicants, they will be invited to discuss the feedback and understand the reasons why their proposal wasn't awarded. So there will be a possibility to have a meeting and understand the outcome a bit better in any instance. Next slide. Great. So I guess that's it in terms of the overview around the process itself. Now I'll talk a little bit about the information and requirements. So the EOI deadline is February 19th, 2021 at 4 p.m. Atlantic. We have had applicants submit just before the deadline on Eastern time and West Coast time, and it's really heartbreaking when we see that happen, because I guess just to be really clear about this, if we do not have the application in the OSCR inbox by 4 p.m. Atlantic, it will not be processed. So don't take the last 2 or 3 minutes, to finish off that last sentence and then miss the deadline, because we are quite hardline on this. And please also recognize that it is Atlantic time, not Eastern time, and that late EOIs will not be processed. So don't take a chance on that and have it get caught in the ether somewhere. EOIs need to be submitted to OSCR at oceansupercluster.ca. And as I mentioned before, again, really important that the lead applicant at least must have operations in Canada and be a member of the OSC, either an associate or an industry member, it doesn't matter, before you hit the send button on that EOI submission. So please take note of that. Next slide, please. Great. So a bit around the consortium requirements. This is new for us in terms of the consortium requirements and the partnership requirements. And for those of you familiar with the TL Core program, we have a consortium requirement of at least 2 private sector firms. This call is a bit different, and in line with Kendra's comments, we really are trying to support and grow private-public sector partnerships through this particular call. So in line with that, we have a consortium requirement of at least 3 collaborators that are directly involved and meaningfully benefiting from the project. And obviously you would convey the nature of their roles and how they're involved through the EOI content itself. And within that 3 collaborator minimum, at least one of them would need to be a small, medium-sized enterprise. And at least one of them would need to be a non-private sector organization. Right? So NPOs or academic institutions are examples. The maximum permitted project duration is 30 months. And I wanted to take just a bit of time to clarify some detail on the EOI template around this in particular. And so we are permitting in this call for projects to extend beyond the OSC's current cycle termination date of March 31st, 2023. But we are doing that and we are sharing the risk of that with applicants. And so there is language within the EOI template that's a bit more specific that calls that out. And so if people are considering having a project that runs up to 30 months, that's permitted, but it's obviously under the risk that anything beyond the March 31st date 2023 would have the possibility of not getting reimbursed. We don't think that's going to happen. All the indications are that the Innovation Superclusters Initiative and all 5 superclusters are in this situation will be extended. And so that's part of the reason why we've granted this flexibility, but definitely take note of that and consider that, because it is a risk that you would be taking with longer running projects. The EOI submission limit is up to 3 EOIs per lead applicant, and so there's quite a bit of flexibility there. And in addition to being a lead applicant on up to 3 EOIs, you can also participate as a collaborator, so anyone other but a lead applicant, on any number of EOIs. And so what we did permit up to 3 EOIs to come in from a lead applicant, because recognizing that there are some large institutions and organizations that might want to put in more than one EOI. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should. Definitely, if you don't have that much time or effort to allocate to submitting multiple EOIs, I'd recommend concentrating on the one and having that come in be strong. But there is the possibility for organizations that have a number of ideas that they want to lead on to submit up to 3 EOIs. Next slide, please. Great. Okay, so here's a little bit about the financials, how these work. So the reimbursement rate for the OSCR call is up to 50%. So the way that the OSC TL program works is that we reimburse in industry cash and in-kind contributions. So the contributions that are made by private sector firms who are participating in the project. And I want to pause here and just make sure that that's clear, because despite the consortium requirement to have a non-private sector firm be part of the consortium, their contributions are not leverageable, so they're not reimbursable. They're contributory, they're complementary, and we would see them as supporting the project. It would increase the project total value and are generally supportive to the application, but non-private sector contributions are not reimbursable by OSC. Okay, and so in line with that, a minimum of 1 private sector firm must make a financial contribution to the project, and you need to include sufficient amount of industry contributions for the ask that you're making of the OSC. Right, and so that needs to match. Effectively, the industry contributions need to match the OSC ask, and we would need to see contributing firms be clearly identified. So So don't, for example, don't put down like undetermined project, private sector firm, and then put down a contribution in the EOI template. You need to have those organizations identified, and they need to have their contact information included on the EOI template. Okay, next slide. Great. So in line with just the previous comments made on the fact that we reimburse industry contributions, so that total amount, you take that to be 100%, okay, of your industry contribution. That's the cash and the in-kind. So up to 25% of that total industry contribution amount, right? Not the total project value, including OSE contributions and other public sector contributions, but just the industry contribution portion. Up to 25% of that can be in kind, and in kind is reimbursable. It is required, you know, to justify the market value of the in kind contribution and those types of details, which we do all the time. But we do reimburse on in kind contributions up to 25% of the total industry contribution. And another really important point, particularly for SMEs, because this is quite often how they make cash contributions to projects, is around salaries. So the salaries of new and existing industry personnel are considered cash contributions to the project, and you should include them as part of your cash contribution. Okay. And particularly if there's questions about this, please feel free to put them in the chat function as we're going along, and we're going to pick them up all at the end. We're going to bring a couple of other additional people online to answer those questions. So if there's questions that are coming up as you hear me talk, please feel free to get a head start and start putting those into the chat. Minimum and maximum budgets are $250K and $5 million. So just to clarify, the minimum OSC ask, right, must be $250K, and the maximum OSC ask is $5 million. And that, of course, that ask is only possible to be made if you have the industry contributions to back that up. And of course, around incrementality, all projects need to be incremental to regular business undertakings. So we will require assertion around the fact that the project is not already in progress, that the project is new, or would be used to expand the scope of a proposed project. Next slide. Okay, so that's I guess that's an overview, and all of that information is in the guidelines document, but we did want to take the time to walk through that because there's some new requirements in there and some ones that maybe at first time reading them might not be totally clear. So we wanted to make sure that we were providing some Q&A time to clear up any of those, so that there's no uncertainty around any of those aspects. So I'll take a little bit less time to go through the project selection criteria, but did overarchingly want to make a couple of comments. We are looking for projects in this, it's not a large allocation that we're making to this particular program. It's about 10% of our total allocation, but we do think that there are some really high value projects in this space. And like Kendra mentioned, it is an area of projects that we would prove through here that we have never considered before in our other programming. And it's effectively a bit of a hybrid between the TL core program, which is exclusively focused on delivering commercialization outcomes for each and every project that goes through that program. That's a mandatory requirement. That's not the case in this particular call. And then also the innovation ecosystem stream, which has a different funding mechanism and a different set of criteria. But this really is a bit of a call that's in the middle of those two programs. So overarchingly, the projects that will be approved through this program will address challenges that are impeding multiple Canadian companies to launch or proliferate their offerings. We're looking for projects that leverage digital innovation and business reform to deliver transformational changes in value, competitiveness, and connectivity, and contribute to the advancement of the ocean innovation ecosystem, particularly in this case by creating and strengthening relationships between private and public sectors. Next slide. So there's 4 key criteria, and I'm going to take just a minute to run through each of the major ones. And this again is in the guidelines, and there's also some examples of the types of projects in there that we think would most likely be the source of some really good proposals, although we obviously would leave it to the applicants to determine those high interest areas and to a certain extent figure that out for themselves. But we have given some additional detail just around the types of projects where we think there would be a strong alignment and a good relevancy to this call. But there are 4 key criteria that we will be evaluating proposals against. And the first one is around industrial relevancy and contribution to growth. This particular criteria is focusing in to make sure that projects demonstrate that they have a clearly defined and significant ocean industry challenge that they are addressing, right? That will require a significant thinking, capability, and technology to resolve. We're also looking for projects to demonstrate that they have pull from industry, that there's traction from industry sectors for the solution that is being proposed, and that there's a significant positive impact that the project will make on the Canadian ocean economy. Next slide. Next one is around capability and technology advancement. So we will be looking for projects to accelerate the delivery of ocean-related technologies and commercial offerings for more than just one firm, right? I mean, that is a bit of what we're trying to do here with this call. It has a broader ecosystem benefit that we're looking to see delivered. The consortium requirements are different. So we really are looking for some of these projects, even though they aren't specifically focused on realizing an individual commercialization outcome, we are looking for them to be able to deliver transformational changes in value and connectivity, and demonstrate why these advancements would not be possible in the absence of OSCR. So the distinctiveness is what we're looking for in the project as well. Next slide. So quality of collaboration and reach of impact. So I mentioned this before, but just worth reiterating that we're seeking a meaningful, distinctive private-public sector consortium to be created to execute the project, that it would include partners for both public and private sector. We're also looking for the project to deliver a quantifiable benefit to the ocean innovation ecosystem. So ways that projects could potentially demonstrate their contribution include, they're listed here below, but this is not an exhaustive list. So we're looking for project impacts to extend to underrepresented groups, involvement in multiple provinces, facilitating new investment into SMEs, or improving access to R&D and testing facilities and technology validation opportunities in Canada. And we're also looking for the way by which the IE benefits are to be delivered to be quite clear and tangible. Next one. And the last one is just around project execution plan. This is kind of the relatively obvious requirements, typical of many project call for proposals. So we're looking for the roles of collaborators to be clear, have the capability to deliver, appropriate experience and expertise, having an articulate project plan that has clear tasks, milestones, and deliverables, a detailed budget in line with the project plan, and of course a realistic time frame. And so the project selection criteria, maybe just before I move on from this, is primarily covering the full proposal application, but the EOI is a bit of a shortened summary version of these criteria. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to bring on a few extra folks to take the Q&A here. So if you just bear with me a minute, we will go to the top of the pile here and get going on some of the questions. Okay, we got a reasonable number in here. I think we've got at least 10 minutes to do this. So let's get going. I guess the first one is whether this presentation will be recorded and will be shared. I believe the answer is yes, but I will ask Nicola possibly to confirm that.
You are correct. It's being recorded and we can share it.
Okay, perfect. It'll probably get posted or something like that on our member portal or online. So that will be available, particularly for people that weren't able to attend today or need to take off a bit early. And we have the second question that is the same as the first question. So we're 2 for 2. Another question about whether or not we can have a copy of the presentation. I think so. I mean, with the presentation will be in the video that gets shared, so that's hopefully just as good. But the material, I guess, will be available. Okay, the next one is there a preferred value per project? I.e., do you want to have, a certain number of projects at a certain value each, or are you looking to spread this around? Yeah, I think generally the question is we're thinking that, I can take this one, folks, that there probably is a pretty diverse set of projects that we could fund through this particular call, and we didn't want to exclude, good small or large projects from contention. So generally speaking, we're thinking that there'll be a diversity of sizes of projects that are funding. And the way that the call's been structured, we'll obviously, with the size of the OSC ask, the rigor and the strength of the project and the ability for them to deliver a return on the investment that we were making in terms of benefits to the consortium and the broader ecosystem will obviously be scrutinized. But generally, no, there isn't a real preference per se for a small project or a big project. But we did set minimum OSC ask to be 250K. Ideally, we'd get a nice spread of projects of different sizes that we think would likely build up, a nice portfolio in response to this call. So I kind of walked around that question a bit, but we're expecting to fund projects at varying levels, and there's no real preference for big over small. If you are a public institution that would like to leverage the funding provided by the private sector and OSCR, do you have a list of eligible funding programs, okay, that have been used in the past? So I think they're talking a little bit there about the types of programs that we would typically see stacked. Megan, I don't know if there's ones that you deal with more often than others, or whether we have a list of those. I'm not sure.
Don't have a list ready or available, but we typically see stacking with MyTax, with IRAP, with some other government funding sources, provincial sources and municipal sources.
Yeah, so I guess the answer there is that there's a variety that we have seen come through in projects. Probably the most dominant ones are MyTax and IRAP, but maybe just one quick comment is that the stacking requirements and some of the important limits would need to be taken into account for whatever program it is that you are using as the stack against us. And so there's important program requirements around stacking within individual programs that you would use that need to be obviously considered and met, right? So we will leave that Megan, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. We don't have a maximum. We are, but we are obviously really concerned with the maximum stacking limits of other programs that would come into our project.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have a maximum ourselves, but every program has to respect their own stacking limits, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Perfect. Another one about whether they can get access to the presentation or not. So we will definitely make all of that happen. Can you please elaborate a bit on the examples of projects that you think would be a strong fit? Yeah, I mean, I can go over a little bit what was in the guidelines there. We gave some examples there to help, I guess, tease the imagination about what the art of the possible is for the call. But we do think it's a pretty big opportunity set. So I guess that's the first thing I would say. Some examples would be digital ocean supply chain development initiatives. We think that there's a pretty strong basis for private and public sector partnerships that would be funded by industry, because obviously in this case, a really important criteria for any project would be the fact that industry would be interested in funding it, right, and making a contribution. And so it would need to be something that above all else, you would be able to solicit the required industry contribution from the private sector, and also solicit the interest of the public sector to getting involved, right? And so those two requirements are important to consider in any instance. But I mean, for example, the development of remote or autonomous networks ocean-based technology validation of products for multiple firms, so kind of a platform validation. Sustainability-focused initiatives we think are probably a really good area given the many corporate strategies that are redirecting towards those type of objectives, and the fact that the public sector is obviously quite very highly capable in that area. Communication infrastructure, IP, information exchange, those are examples of types of projects where we think there would be a strong relevancy to this call. Next question is, can ecosystem members be the project lead? Yes, so I mean, just to clarify, any organization that is a member in an OSC member can lead a project. They can lead up to 3 submissions, actually. So that could be an associate member, it could be an industry member, it could, and within the associate member category, that could be a public sector organization that would be the lead applicant. So there's no restriction on the type of member that could lead a submission. Will NGOs be considered as partners? Yes, and with respect to NGOs, this call in particular seems to be quite a nice sweet spot for that type of organization, because you're really sitting in the middle there. They would be considered as non-private sector partners, I guess. So yes, but they are often have mandates where they're quite familiar with significant industry challenges that exist. They often have really good connections to the public sector as well. So there's a really important and probably good role that an NGO could play on a project, either in terms of leading it or being a bit of the glue that brings some of the consortium together in terms of the industry challenge and what types of partners could be brought into the consortium. Do you consider offshore wind to be a sector that fits the ocean supercluster? Yes. Yes. Could you discuss opportunities format for the collaborative discussion? Yeah, we're going to get to that right after the Q&A. We have a whole, the rest of the presentation is on how we're going to be doing that. So I'll push that down to that part of the material. We are US-based member. We do not have Canadian operations, but our collaborators do, but they are not members. Is that acceptable? No. So what we would need to do is have one of them, that's a Canadian, one of the organizations that's operating in Canada, would need to become a member. So again, just to reiterate on that, and we have more material about how to become a member in just a minute. So I might get into the details at that point, but they would need to become one of your consortium would need to become a member. Partners outside of Canada are allowed to participate. Their contributions wouldn't be leverageable, but they are allowed to participate, and we do get international participants on OSC projects. Another really interesting question. So like on buy and sell for government contracts, is there a list of interested suppliers where a firm might be able to link up with other firms on project proposals, or is this just left to the networking activities? So that's part of what we're going to be talking about right after the Q&A, is a bit of a process that we have set up to try to make sure that anybody who is interested in promoting a project idea or hearing about a project idea, if someone's seeking, soliciting additional partners, to be able to get access to that. So the whole rest of this webinar is about the process that we're building around that for everybody. What is the expected start date for approved projects? So that would be immediately after contracting. Our contracting run rates now are somewhere between, I think, 3 and 5 months, depending on how complicated the project is and how long it takes. So it would likely be around that time frame, so in the summer, late summer. And then maybe just one more quick question that we often get asked is, when are applicants able to start incurring costs that are reimbursable by OSC? So that the answer to that question is actually different. Once you have the award letter in hand, which would be in the beginning of May, then you would, at your own risk, at the applicant's risk, obviously if we don't sign a contract, there'd be a problem, but at the applicant's risk, they're able to start incurring costs. And at the point that your project is executed, you would immediately be able to put in a claim for all of the costs that have been incurred since the date of the award letter back in May, and then get reimbursed for those costs. And we do have quite a few applicants that decide to get going that way, but that there is a risk to doing that. Could a new company, not an ongoing concern, submit an EOI? Yes, as long as they're a member. Was it more advantage to have an industry member as lead rather than a non-member? I think that would depend on your consortium and who's, because typically the lead is doing a lot of the writing. And so who has the time and has the wherewithal and has the ability to really be able to articulate the full kind of 360-degree view of your consortium and all the benefits that it would deliver, has a really good understanding of the industry challenge that's happening, that they're addressing, and how you're going to do that, the public sector and what they bring to the equation. So I would think it would be somewhat dependent on who is the right person to draft the EOI versus whether or not, you know, there's some sort of advantage to it coming and being led by one party or another. This call has been developed so that applications can come in from any consortium member, whether they're private or public, but it really kind of comes down to how well they actually write the EOI, because most of the time the lead applicant is doing a lot of the writing. And so a bit of an ambiguous answer to a question, so sorry about that, but I think it kind of depends. So in the case of associate members that are leading projects, they wouldn't be able to become an industry member, right? They would remain associate members, and so no, they would not need to become an industry member. Will funding and in-kind support from non-OSC members be eligible for matching? So the answer to this one, without being overly complicated, is yes in the beginning and no at the end. And what I mean by that is, in the beginning, when you're putting in your EOI and your proposal, we are accepting on the notion that members or non-members that are making in-kind and cash contributions at the full proposal stage outside of the lead applicant that has to be a member, right, will ultimately get their project approved, will confirm the nature of their industry investments, they'll finalize their budgets, and then they will become industry members and then get a reimbursement on their contribution. And so as long as the industry private sector partners are willing to become industry members in order to get the reimbursement down the road, then it's okay if they're making cash and in-kind contributions at the EOI stage, for example, and not yet be members. I don't know if there's a clearer way that I could say that. That might have been a little bit confusing. But the answer is, if you're a private sector firm, you're able to put forward a notional contribution, right, either a cash or in kind at the proposal stage. And then if and when your project gets approved and you figure out all the rest of the budget details, will require you to become an industry member in order to get reimbursed. If there is anyone else on the team that wants to say that better than me, maybe I'll pause and see if there's another better way to say that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're good. Is the project guide on your website? Yes, it is. The OSCR call for proposals guidelines. There's a dedicated web page on our website. If you go to the main page, if you go to Ocean Supercluster, Canada's Ocean Supercluster website, right at the top of our front page, you'll see we've launched a call for proposals. You click on that, and that will take you to the OSCR web page, where you'll see the proposal guide. There's also some additional guidance documentation. The EOI template is there, for example. That's where you'd get a hold of the EOI template, which is the form you have to complete to submit it. There's also additional guidance documents around eligible costs. I think we've got the IP strategy posted there for those that are interested in understanding that. So there's a number of documents on the OSCR webpage, including the guidelines upon which this deck material was based and the EOI template that is required to be completed and submitted. At the EOI stage, is it necessary to have all the funding nailed down, or can that wait until the full proposal stage? Yeah, I think there's actually a spot in the EOI template itself to delineate and provide a little bit more detail about what you think is still missing from your project at the EOI stage. So if there's additional partners that you just, didn't have time to get lined up, or you've got a capability gap in your consortium that you need to fill, and that might be obvious to you at the EOI stage, but you intend to fill it, then there is a spot in one of the EOI questions to put some more detail around what your intention is in the full proposal stage. But obviously, there's a certain point at which you've got to pull together a basic consortium to be able to move through the EOI process. But there is a spot in the EOI to articulate in a little bit more detail what you think would need to be added to have a strong proposal at the full proposal stage. Okay, so that's all the questions that we had come in. I think we'll have another minute or two possibly at the end of the event for any last final questions. But with that, I think we're going to move on to the next part of the agenda, which is the ideation event. So I'll hand it over to Mel.
Great, thanks, Susan, and hello, everyone. Thanks again for being here with us today. So as part of the plan to support members with project ideation, we're hosting a 2-hour virtual event on February 11th, where all OSC members can join to partake in one-on-one video networking, facilitated breakout group discussions that are based on key areas of interest from industry and that are also related to this call for proposals, the OSCR, and also can watch project pitches from members that are actively developing a project. So there will be 5 discussion group topics with up to 20 people per group, and you're going to register according to the discussion topic that you would like to participate in. So this event, it's really the key opportunity to foster partnerships, build awareness of your project ideas, and to, of course, meet new people. So for those of you that are interested in being one of the members to pitch a project at this event, Corey is going to share an overview of how to explore that opportunity here shortly. Reminder that this is a members only event, so just please make sure that you express interest and are in membership on our website before the event. And so, as Kendra mentioned, with over 350 members that are contributing to the growth of Canada's ocean economy through the Supercluster, you definitely don't want to miss this event. It's going to be a great networking opportunity. So next, Corey Kirkus, who's our member relations lead, is going to take us through a live polling exercise so we can capture your input, as well as go over the membership requirements and talk a bit about how you can socialize your project ideas within OSC platforms. So thanks so much, and Corey, over to you.
Perfect, thanks Mel. I'm just gonna take over the screen, everybody here, so that you can see how to access the live poll for the event here. So if you're able, could you please enter slido.com into a new tab in your browser? And then when you get to that landing page there, the first thing it's going to ask you is to enter the PIN. And if you could enter 53306 and hit enter, it's going to take you to a blank landing page essentially. And I'm just going to give everybody a minute to navigate there. And once I start this poll, the questions, we've got a few here, are automatically going to be populated and you'll be able to answer them. And then we'll take a look at some of the results live for them. So when I click the next screen here, you'll still be able to see slido.com and the pin. So if you're just getting it up and going, don't worry, you'll be able to answer as we move along here. But I'm going to kick us off with our first question, and we're just looking to get some feedback kind of in real time from the audience here because we have a couple of hundred people on the line today. So the first is, does this call for proposals align with the ideas you have for collaborative projects? And we've got 3 answers here, and we can see in the top right here, people are starting to submit them. So if we see that tick up a little bit, once it slows down, we'll move on to the next slide here. But we'll just give it a few seconds here. Good to see folks are dialing in here. That's great. Just give it a few more seconds. Seems to be steady. Okay. See if we can hit 75 here. We're getting pretty close. One more for 60 and we'll go on to the next question. All right, we'll let the 60th person get in on the next round here. So this question here, we're going to be able to see the results, but the question is, where do you feel there's potential for private-public sector collaboration? And there's a number of options here, and you can select as many as you like, as many as you think relevant to the conversations you'd like to take part in. And this feedback is going to help us start to shape our ideation workshop in the short term and other events in the long term that the OSC hosts. So hoping to see at least 60 here. And this one's almost like a bit of a horse race as we see the results coming in real time, but assets of opportunity and ocean technology validation as a decent lead. Ports and shipping, definitely a topical one that I've heard as of late. Emerging standards and regulations. We've been starting to have that conversation a little bit more internally, which is exciting. Let's see what we've got down at the bottom here. Circular economy concepts and biotech. Definitely niche, but some really exciting projects we've seen to date coming through that vertical. The assets of opportunity is pulling away a little bit. Since there's multiple selections here, definitely hoping to see at least 60 coming. Give it just a little bit longer as those keep ticking up. Sustainable seafood and traceability has been a really interesting one. There's lots of members within the portal right now from both the East and West Coast representing different software and all sorts of kind of solutions falling into that vertical. So that's an interesting one. I think there'd be a lot of engaged conversation in the member portal, and I'm going to touch base a little bit after this this polling here on how to find other potential collaborators. So 65, we broke our last record. I'm going to move on to the next question. You can still fill these out even after I click through, so feel free to catch up if you need to. Our last question here is a webinar like this helpful for your understanding of OSC programs? This helps us kind of determine what type of presentations we can make to both the internal and external stakeholders, and will certainly help us dedicate time to these type of things going forward if it is helpful. So give that a quick moment. Okay. As that finishes up, Nicola, what you can do is take over the screen again, and we'll dive into some of the slides where I'll elaborate on membership and ideation. But this poll is still live, so anybody who would like to, please do go to slido.com and 53306 to input your answers. That's perfect. Thank you, Nicola. So I'm going to highlight 3 different components here as it relates to membership with the OSC. And many of you on the line may be familiar with these requirements and the tools I'm going to mention based on past conversations with me, but in my role as member relations lead, I often speak with organizations who are interested in joining the OSC and understanding a little bit more about the resources and programs we have to offer. So I'm going to touch base on how to go about accessing that information and joining, and at the same time how to take part in some of the collaboration and networking that's being put forward to help with this call for proposals. So that's to say, as Susan mentioned earlier, in order to join the ideation workshop and to submit a project idea and an expression of interest, you need to become a member. And there's 2 types of broad membership categories. There's the associate membership and industry membership. Either will do to submit your expression of interest, but associate membership is free, and it's often how organizations start with the OSC. So before we go on to the next slide, I'll touch on that, but once you do become a member, that's when you have the opportunity to share your project idea within the OSC membership. And as we mentioned at the top of the call, there's well over 350 members from coast to coast to coast now, all across the country. So when you become a member, one of the things we'll give you access to is our OSC member portal. And within there, I'll touch on it a bit, but that's where you can share project ideas and find other collaborators. And I'll elaborate on how to get the instructions to do just that. And then finally, at the ideation workshop, this is going to be the opportunity to have your project idea showcased and to take part in discussion groups with other members. So I'll get into some of the details here. So Nicola, if you could go to the next slide, please. For those of you who are not members yet, the first step is to fill out the form, the expression of interest to become a member at oceansupercluster.ca/become a member. If you go to the homepage, oceansupercluster.ca, the first thing you're going to see is a button that says become a member. That's where this link will take you to. And it's a very short form that just helps us get your information on record. And once you submit it, it allows us to send you two main things really. One is an invitation to a weekly webinar that I host, which dives into membership in detail, all of the OSC programs and the resources that we have for the organizations we work with. So that webinar invite will be included. It reoccurs every Thursday at 3 p.m. Atlantic, and will extend beyond the scope of this call for proposals. But also included are the documents related to becoming an official OSC member. And those include our unanimous members agreement and bylaws, which outline in detail the commitments related to membership and how the OSC is governed. And included in that folder is the joinder agreement, which needs to be signed and sent back to membership at oceansupercluster.ca. This is the step that needs to be taken to become an official member, and the OSC will send you a response confirming that we've received the joinder agreement and that it's completed correctly. And with that response, we'll also send you members to the OSC member portal. And this member portal and the login credentials are going to be how you're able to log in and submit your project ideas. If you're already a member, you may very well have your login credentials and have been using them. But if you haven't and you want them resent, or there's somebody in your organization who you'd like to get access to this membership portal as well, just email membership@oceansupercluster.ca and we'll get you set up and help you access those if you need any assistance. So it's a quick overview on the membership, and just to reiterate, becoming an associate member is what's needed to start. And then if your EOI is selected and you move forward to the proposal stage and it's approved, then the private sector company within your application, based on the criteria, will need to become an industry member. There's more information on the website about industry membership, and it's outlined in detail in the membership agreement. But what's important to highlight is that all of our industry members provide a commitment to the OSC for cluster building activities that is in addition to the amount they invest in their project. So during those weekly webinars, I go into those in detail. And for those companies that move forward through the process, we'll highlight this again in more detail. But this is just something I want to point out at the beginning of the process. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Nicola. Perfect. So the first step in sharing your project ideas with the OSC and the membership, and to have them considered to be showcased at the ideation workshop, is to log into the OSC member portal. By end of day today, there will be the instructions there to tell you how to record your project pitch and to share that video with the OSC members via the portal. Okay. So as soon as you log in there, the first thing you're going to see are those detailed instructions and the templates to help you do just that. By following them step by step, you'll be able to get some visibility for your project if you're looking for collaborators. Also, again, if you need any assistance, you can email membership@oceansupercluster.ca. But to help, what we're going to be doing is hosting a weekly tutorial for the OSC member portal. It's going to be an hour. You can come and go within that time frame as you need, but I'll be there to help organizations not only learn how to share project ideas, but how to find the other companies that are working with the OSCs, how to reach out to the individuals at those organizations, as well as show everybody how to leverage discussion groups within the OSC member portal, which is another great tool to have those conversations and basically become a thought leader within a given area that you'd like to bring forward to the OSC and the companies we work with. So all this to say, to share your project idea, log into the OSC member portal and follow the instructions pinned there. And if you don't have credentials yet, the first step is to become a member. And if you're already a member, email membership@oceansupercluster.ca. Okay. With that, all the details are going to be in the member portal there. And if you have any questions here, I'll certainly address them. And thank you for that, Nicola. That's my final slide there. Okay.
I can am I live? Am I able to say something? Yeah, just jumping in here really quick. Just a couple of extra pieces of information around the ideation workshop. So the registration for that is going out imminently within the next 24 hours or so. I think Mel might have already mentioned that. Available to members only. So that will be coming out imminently, and the agenda is going to look like a series of project pitches, right? So the ones that come in will get lined up, and we'll have that be a main part of the event. There'll be industry booths, booths that will be available for the project pitches, and so you'll have the opportunity to be able to converse with the individuals that put in project pitches during that time. And then there's also going to be a set of discussion topics where you'll get an opportunity to pick your favorites, I guess, during the registration process. So those will be facilitated discussion groups and will be conducted through the Hop-In platform. And so it's got that vibe where you're able to move into a project discussion and participate in that with quite a few other individuals. So it'll be a relatively informal, conversational, discussion group topic. And then for those that I guess have a more general interest, there's the ability to be able to move between different topics and kind of understand what's going on in a couple different spots. So I just wanted to mention those last couple things, and that project, the project ideation event will be happening obviously before the EOIs are submitted on the deadline of February 19th. So I believe it's I don't remember the exact date, but all the information is in the registration email that'll be coming out very shortly.
Thanks for that, Susan.
Yep. Okay, so that's it for us. Hope you guys found this helpful. Again, I really appreciate everyone taking the time, and really looking forward to some of the ideas that are coming in through OSCR and some of the upcoming discussions over the next couple of weeks. So thanks again for your time, and take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.